Guys, I'm back and today I'm going to be going through my eyeshadow palettes to find brow shades. So when I finished up my the Creme Shop Eyebrow Pom Pom in my 20 and 24 project pan, that was my last pomade, and I thought when I finished that I would finish up the pencil that I have and then go buy a brow powder. I had my eye on the Anastasia Beverly Hills one. But through my Pan Those Eyeshadows project, I found out that MAC Cozy Gray, which is in my Amber Times 9 palette, is like a great brow color for me. I think it looks really nice and suits my coloring really well. So I wanted to go through my eyeshadow palette collection and figure out if I have any dupes for Cozy Gray that I can use as a brow powder before I go out and purchase something. And ideally, I won't need to go out and purchase any brow products except maybe a brow gel in 2025, and I can just focus on using up the things that I already have. So if that kind of content is something that you're interested in, focusing on using one's collection to the fullest, please stick around. And without further ado, let's hop straight into the swatching of all the taupey browns in my eyeshadow collection. This is the shade Cozy Gray, and it is really like the perfect brow shade for me. And so I thought it would be fun to try to find others in my collection that work similarly. The hard part is this is barely visible on my skin tone. I mean, for how great it looks in my brows, it really does not swatch well. It almost looks white. And so shades that I typically would look at and be like, oh, that'll be a good brow shade for me, they look a little bit too warm, too dark, something like that. This overhead style is new to me, so I do apologize in advance for any weird lighting things, and I will be working on this kind of for future inventory and other kinds of videos like this. I went through my collection and I pulled anything that looked like it might have something that would work. Some of these I know won't work from previous experimenting, and so I wanted to pull those as examples of something that I think would be a good brow shade for me and then isn't. A great example is this Tarte In Bloom palette, and it is the shade Jet Setter. Looks in my head like it would be a good brow shade, and it really just does not work very well for me. And just to compare it to MAC Cozy Gray, that's it right there. And as you can see, it's much darker and not quite as gray. Sometimes it will work in a pinch, but it's not really a great brow shade for me. So this was just one that I pulled for an example. One that, just flipping through everything, looked promising was this Madison Beer Channel Surfing Artistry palette. And I pulled this for the shade Jericho, which is right here. So let's compare this. Although this does look a little bit dark and almost a little bit yellow. Definitely not quite the same. It has kind of a greeny undertone rather than like a grayness to it. So unfortunately, I don't think this is a dupe. One that I wasn't super hopeful for, but I decided to pull anyways, is this Dior Backstage Eye palette in the shade Warm Neutrals. And I wanted to look at Sculpting Powder, which is this shade right here. As we can see already, it's quite a bit darker. Could probably, like the Tarte palette, this could probably work in a pinch, but it's just not quite what looks best in my brows. Then one that looked quite promising, another MAC shadow. This is from Dusty Rose Times 9, and this is the shade Frankly Frosty. And it's another like almost like whitish gray. That looks kind of promising. Oh, yep. Okay. This might be what I reach for next then. As you can see, those two are 2 peas in a pod. Okay. I'll put this in a pile to test out because that looks like it's a good dupe. Then I also pulled this Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. There wasn't exactly a shade in particular. I thought I would just swatch because it has 2 kind of cool tones just to show next to that tart one. The gray almost looks better than Twig, which is right there. It's Twig and Slate. So that's unfortunately another one that's just too dark. Another one that I have used in my brows before in a pinch is from my Smashbox Cover Shop Matte palette. Sometimes when I was traveling with this, well, this was my Pan That palette, the shade Publisher is what I would use in my brows. And this is one where it works, but I just don't think it looks great. Yeah, it's like quite dark and it almost looks warm compared to all of the other cool tones that I have on my hand right now. I mean, these 3 are quite gray. These 2 are pretty cool toned, and then these 2 look kind of green to me, and this almost looks a little bit warm. So this is an example of something that I used to use and then would wonder why I never liked the look of my brows. Huda Beauty has another gray in here that I thought maybe could work. As we can see, it's quite dark. Is honestly probably tonally more on this cool toned side of shades that are just too dark rather than too dark and the wrong tone. Maybe I could try that out. You know what? I'm going to stick this in the try it out pile just because it's quite dark, but I'm not really a huge fan of wearing it in the crease, which is how I ended up discovering that this Cozy Gray shade was a great brow shade for me. So maybe if I used a light hand, I could make it work. Then this Tarte 2017 Holiday palette obviously has a lot going on in it, and I thought the shade Getaway or Desert might work. Oh, Getaway kind of looks promising. It's a little bit warmer. It's not quite as cool. But it's kind of the right lightness. Maybe this desert shade is like kind of like these. It's almost turning green. I think I'm going to put Getaway, this one, in the try it out pile. And then the last one that I thought might work is another MAC shade, and this is Wedge. This is one that I bought as a single, and this worked out. That would be really funny. I'm worried that it's going to be too warm. Because it's a beautiful crease shade, but these 2 are shades that I wouldn't wear in the crease, and they end up working perfectly. So you never know. I think that's just not quite right. Yeah, it looks like it'll be a little bit too warm, especially around the edges of the swatch. It's pulling a little bit orange. So I'm going to put these fails away, and then I'm going to set you back up and try some of these in my brows, and I will be right back. Okay, I am back, and I have one brow filled in with MAC Cozy Gray, which was my starting shade, and now I'm going to go in with the other shades that I've set aside to try out, and we're going to test them out. So I'm going to start with the Tarte Holiday Collection in the shade Getaway, and just go to town on this other eyebrow. I think that doesn't look bad. It definitely doesn't look the exact same. It's a little bit like a tinge less gray, a little bit more brown, but I think especially like from a distance that people would normally look at me at, it looks pretty good. So this one is going to get marked in my powder eyeshadows as a potential brow shade, and let's move on to the Huda one. Okay, I have removed the product from that brow with a makeup eraser, and now it's time to go in with the Huda shade in Suede. This is not really my best application, but this is exactly what I mean by a shade that's just not the right undertone or color at all. This looks like, in my view, like in the mirror, this is looking almost like orange, just because it has a deceptive warmish undertone, despite the fact that it is supposed to be a gray. And so this is a fail, and let's take off this and try the last MAC shade. Okay, that has been removed, and I tried to cover up the redness a little bit, and now it's time to go in with the last shade. And I'm just going to go in with a clean brush. And then here is the shade Frankly Frosty from my MAC Dusty Rose x9 palette. It's looking a little bit lighter than Cozy Gray, so that is definitely something to consider. I still think it looks fine. It's just pulling a little bit white. It may have just been my application, because that's not my favorite brush to apply brow product with, but I think I could add in a few selective strokes of a darker color and fix it. So I think that, honestly, in my ranking of like how good I think my brows look, Cozy Gray is just a really great shade for me. And then I think I like the Tarte shade more than I ended up liking the MAC shade. I do think I will end up reaching for both of them, but this was a really interesting experiment, because I would have, when just pulling these palettes out to do this video, I thought this one was going to be the only dupe in my collections. So this was really fun for me. My goal is to not buy things that I don't need as much in 2025, and so it'll be nice to have something to reach for in my collection that I already own, rather than going out and doing a bunch of unnecessary shopping when I already have a whole bin full of eyeshadow palettes. And most of all, I hope you're having an incredible, awesome day wherever you are, and that I get to see you in a future video. Thanks, guys.